All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over politics. And I've got another great guest. This is a return appearance, one of my favorite people, and I can't wait to bring him on. But before I do that, I'm just going to remind you, you already know what I'm going to say. You should be actually doing it right now if you haven't already. You got to like this, you got to share this, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done that. Because if you haven't subscribed to my channel, you're like missing out on everything important in the world. So hit that, and that way you'll be informed whenever I upload a new interview or whenever I just want to rant about something, which I know you want to hear. But anyway, before I bring on my guest, y'all know I am very big on battling injustice at the local and state level. Now, it's important to do it at the federal level too, but that's not in your backyard. There's all kinds of deep state corruption happening in your backyard. If you're not paying attention, it might affect you or somebody that you love. And I can think of nobody better to speak to about this than my guest, founder of You Are the Power, Mr. Spike Cohen. Welcome to the program again, brother.
Thank you. It's always great to be on, Jeff. Thank you for having me on again.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. Last time you were on my podcast, I think you might have just started You Are the Power, but on our podcast, you actually defeated white supremacy single-handedly just by raising a single foot.
I am so glad you brought this up, Jeff. I was going to kind of ramrod this in, but I'm glad that you segued into it perfectly. It's better for both of us. There is a tremendous controversy from the last time that I was on your show, and people thought that I was being facetious when I said, and I think this is an exact quote, that every day I wake up and I look up into the sky angrily and I wave my fist and say, "Hey, white supremacy, I've got a sandwich for you, a knuckle sandwich." And people thought I was joking. And it's important for people to know that's not true. Why would I joke about that? Why would I joke about, I wouldn't joke about that. I do it even more now. You know, some people were worried that with my recent conversion to Christianity that I'd become like cozy with white supremacy, which means they've never actually read the Bible, but that's another subject. But anyway, so it's important for people to know that now I've gone past just waving my fist. That's not enough, because also, first of all, violence isn't going to solve it, and second of all, I don't think it even realizes why I'm angry. And so I now I will look at I have this just blank piece of paper up next to my mirror, and it's just, solid, right? Just blank white. It's okay. It's white. Yeah. Blank white. You're right. I made an assumption. I made a normative assumption. I made a white paper normative assumption. And I feel worse about it than you do. I can assure you, as an ally, I feel things more than you do. But anyway, I saw, as we know. So I look at this white piece of paper and I look at it and I try not to shake my fist, but so help me, sometimes I do it. And I go, "You're not supreme."
No, not at all. And I think it's important for white pieces of paper to realize that. I mean, I've got paper right here and it tries to tell me that it's supreme. It even knocked over my other glasses, but that will not affect me. And I will tell you, ever since that podcast episode, I have seen white supremacy diminish exponentially. I lived in Texas. I'm here in the deep South in Louisiana, and I haven't even been lynched once. It's amazing.
It's literally there's nothing. I especially like going on X and seeing what I can only describe as a gaping vacuum of white supremacy, where people are desperately trying to find something else to talk about since white supremacy no longer exists. And so just again, like anytime I can, like when I see this sheet of white paper, I don't see anything superior to
there's more black on that
sheets of paper.
Yeah, you got more black in that than you do white.
Well, this is actually how I fight it. So this is like a notepad. And so what I do is, when this thing's trying to act like it's superior, I envelop it in the blackness. And then again, it's subtle. It's both overt and covert things that we have to do in our day-to-day life. Certainly nothing that changes anything in my life in any real definable or substantive way whatsoever. It's really about making sure that I'm driving home to you, but especially to myself, that this really is about me and how I feel about it and what makes me feel better. Because I'm sure you have an opinion. I don't want to hear it, but I'm sure you have an opinion on this. But what's important is what is Spike? People say, what is Spike thinking? But they don't think, how is Spike? And I said that wrong. People wonder, what is Spike doing? People wonder how I'm going to handle this. And the thing is, what's important is that they see that I'm putting my all into this. And by my all, I mean that I do largely useless things that make me feel better. And as we established in the last time I was on, that's what it's all about, is how I feel about this. And I feel great about this.
Yeah, especially when people tell you how wonderful you are and how virtuous you are for doing it. That's only going to make you feel better, and that's really what it's all about. But I do want to segue into what we're here to actually talk about, because you've already
Yes,
eliminated
please,
white
let's do that.
supremacy. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. But you have taken on something that everybody should be aware of. And honestly, I think that what you're doing is like the blueprint for what any liberty lover should be following. Before we get into all of that,
Yeah.
just for like maybe like the one person who doesn't know who you are, can you just
Yes.
introduce yourself, your background, what are you all about?
Sure. Can you imagine being that one person and watching all of that and being like, why am I watching that? They probably,
I'd rather bathe in
honestly, we
that.
probably protected ourselves from anyone not knowing who I am, because anyone who didn't already know who I am has already tuned out after that insanity. And they're like, whatever this nonsense is, I'm not interested. So yeah, I'm Spike Cohen. I ran for vice president in 2020. I came in third place, which is way cooler sounding than saying we got like 1.5%, but it was third place. And I ran as a libertarian. I'm a very strong believer in libertarianism. I believe that we should be respected as individual human beings. I believe that whatever type of governance we have should exist to protect lives, rights, and property. I believe that that is the most moral and just way for governance to work. And whenever it tries to do more than that, everything gets worse. And so, also part of being a libertarian is very often being proven right about just about everything, and constantly losing elections. And so I realized that, it was running for vice president was one of the coolest, most challenging, and most rewarding things I ever did, in that it helped me to grow an incredible to create and foster and grow an incredible network of like-minded activists across the country who are fine with getting together every few years and running for office and knowing we're probably not going to get, like, we'll try to get third place, but they wanted to do more. At the same time, I was looking at a public who would very often tell me, yeah, your ideas sound great. You make more sense than Trump or Biden. You have no chance of winning. I'm not voting for you.
Hmm.
And so I thought, okay, so our ideas are approachable and agreeable for many people, but they just don't want to be a part of losing. And then I'd meet other people who go, yeah, your ideas sound great, but let's see it in practice. Like, you're telling me theories. Let's see it actually playing out. And then finally, I met a lot of people who, this isn't theory to them. This isn't hypothetical. Their lives are being destroyed by out of control government officials right now, and they need our help right now. And very often they weren't, I mean, maybe some of what was happening as a result of things that were going on in DC. But for the most part, they were being affected at the local level. They were being affected by their local city council, their county council, their school board, their sheriff's department, something like that, the zoning board. Like, they would, just as local as it gets, and their lives were being completely upended. They were losing their homes, their businesses, their families, and everything else. And I thought, you know what? We got people that want to do work all the time. We got people who are kind of curious to our ideas, but they just don't want to be a part of losing. We've got a bunch of people who really need to be exposed to our ideas in a way that makes sense to them. And we got a bunch of people who need help right now. What if we could find a way to combine all of that? And that's what we have with You Are the Power. We find people who are having their lives destroyed by local and state level government officials. We direct the public, we alert the public to what's happening to them, to what's happening to these people. And instead of just getting them angry, we direct their anger and direct them to contact the specific government officials that are doing this harm, and tell them to back off and do the right thing. And if that sounds like some kind of, pie in the sky pipe dream, I would probably agree with you, except for the last 2 years, we've had a 100% success rate.
Mm, mm. So let me ask you this. Talk to us about the moment that convinced you that America needed You Are the Power.
I would say probably the first, I mean, I got little inklings along the way. Like, honestly, the first thing I was trying to do was figure out a good way to distill libertarianism into a message that wasn't just approachable, but also explained the why. And if I can, I just want to take a brief step back. Libertarians talk about the non-aggression principle.
Yes.
And, without going into, all the rabbit hole of that, basically it's, we own ourselves, we own our property, and people shouldn't impose themselves on us. They shouldn't take from us. They shouldn't take from our lives. They shouldn't impose themselves on our rights. They shouldn't impose themselves on our property. They shouldn't take from us. They shouldn't assault us and all of that. And that they shouldn't do it whether they're just our neighbor or a government official or anyone else. They just shouldn't do it. And so I would explain that to people, and every once in a while I'd run into someone who goes, "Why?"
Mm.
And I go, "What do you mean? Why shouldn't you do that? What if I need it?" And I'm like, "But you don't take from people. I mean, you learned as a kid, don't take from people." And they're like, "Yeah, but what if someone's like really wealthy and I need some of their money and I need healthcare or I need housing or I need whatever? What do I care if I take it from them? They've got plenty."
Mm.
And so I'm now having to appeal to someone's morality that they may not actually have.
Wow.
And so I realized something. I need to not just explain the principle behind what we do, but why we do that. So we'll get back to that. But that was in the back of my head that we had to address that. During the campaign, I'm seeing all these people that are excited to do what we're doing, but they want to do it all the time. And I'm like, well, we can't run for office all the time, but there's got to be something we can do.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we got to get out there and message. And I'm like, I don't know. I think we talk enough, but we definitely need to be doing something. And then what started happening was people actually started coming to my events and talking about something that was happening to them. This was 2020. So a lot of times it was people that like they were having their business threatened because they didn't enforce the mask mandates or because they opened during the lockdowns or something like that. People that were being threatened with having their lives destroyed because they were speaking out against mask mandates at their school board, like all sorts of different stuff. People that had been wrongfully arrested for things or had been a victim of the war on drugs and were trying to get back on their feet. And the local police kept using it against them and knocking them back down and all these different things. And I thought, so I try to connect them with like local activists and see if we could make any hay of it. Sometimes they could, sometimes they didn't really have the wherewithal to do it. But I thought, well, at least we're connecting people. And I thought, what if we formalize this a little? What if I use my social media instead of focusing primarily on like, national level policy and like libertarian, I guess, philosophical messaging? What if I talked about individuals and families that were having terrible things happen to them?
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2021, as a proof of concept, we started trying this out. So I guess that was the real moment that I thought there's something here, I think. 2021, I said, before we form a 501 nonprofit and start asking for donations and start hiring people and all this stuff, let's just see if this is going to work. And so we found a few, like, I guess, test causes that we had been told about. And I was like, let's use our social media. Let's get some volunteers together. Let's show up and speak at city council meetings. Let's put out what we're doing on social media and let's see what happens. And with a budget of essentially nothing, and with like a few dozen volunteers and a handful of cases, we had a 70% success rate.
Mm.
And I thought there's something here because if you're a libertarian, 70% success rate sounds unattainable because we usually have like a 0 point something success rate. And so, even a whole number, much less double digits, that's incredible. And so I thought, okay, there's something here. Then I started talking with some of our other partners and stakeholders that we were working with, and my friends over at the Foundation for Harmony and Prosperity tuned me into the principle of human respect. And I thought, and the principle of human respect is essentially when we are respected as individual human beings, we are more prosperous, we are more harmonious, we are happier, and we are freer. And conversely, when we aren't respected as individual human beings, when we're treated like cattle to tax, or when we're treated like a political obstacle to impose, for politicians to impose themselves on, or any time that we're not being treated like individual human beings, we are less prosperous, less harmonious, less happy, and ultimately less free. This didn't just explain libertarianism, it explained from like a natural principle standpoint why we want, why we are libertarian, what we are fighting for. And then we could use these causes, these individuals and families and businesses that we were helping as examples of what happens when we are not respected as individual human beings. And that's when it really started to come together. And so starting off, we had a 70% success rate, quickly turned into an 80% success rate. Over the lifetime of You Are the Power, we've had a roughly 90% success rate. Like I said, for the last roughly 2 years, we've had a 100% success rate.
Yeah, and, you know, and what I like about the human respect principle and what you guys are doing is that it, you know, like you said, people already agree with the ideas for the most part.
Yeah, yeah,
It may not win at the electoral level, especially at the national level. But the thing is, what you guys are doing is putting this into action. You're making it concrete,
yeah,
tangible. You're putting it into stories that people can read, and maybe they're reading about it and saying, you know what? I remember that happened to my uncle. That happened to my brother. That happened
yep,
to my neighbor down the
yep.
street. Something similar happened. How often is this happening? That's actually why I like to tell these stories, because I want people to know how often it does. And what
Yeah.
you're doing is highlighting these situations, but not just the problem. Like, you're telling the sad stories, you know, the sob stories
Yep.
that
Yep.
make people angry. And it's a righteous anger that people have when they see this stuff, because deep down, like, you know, the law of God is written on our hearts. We see something unjust, we get mad. It's natural. There's a
We
reason.
intuitively know there's something wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a reason why we always like it when Superman beats Lex Luthor, right? That's justice.
Right. Right.
But I think that a lot of the problem that people have is that they just focus on the problem, but they don't know what the solution is, and you're providing that for them. It's not like everybody's
Yeah.
going to show up to protest. Not everybody's going to show up to speak at city council meetings, but they can do something, right? There's always something that somebody can
They
do to help get justice.
they they can even just share the post or send an email. Like very often, I tell people, like, because people be like, I don't know how much I can devote. And I'm like, can you like share a post every like week or so? And they're like, yeah, of course. I'm like, thank you. That's incredible. We have thousands of people that's essentially what they do. They see our posts and they share them, or they comment, or they maybe every once in a while they'll send an email or a text message or whatever to one of the officials that we're targeting. Great. That's all fantastic. We I was talking about the principle of human respect. We apply it as our principle, as like our guiding philosophy, but it's also part of our tactic. We don't talk about the government. We talk about individual human beings who are using their agency to choose to impose themselves on other individual human beings and to treat them something other than a human being. And so we start, and this is something libertarians very often have a problem with. We tend to think of things as like when we see a terrible disaster, we'll have a brief moment of going, wow, that's terrible. But we're very quickly thinking like, how'd that happen? Or if something seems off, we're like, I don't think I'm getting the whole story. Like we kind of bypass the emotional response most people have, or we breeze by it. We have a brief emotional response. We're not like robots or anything, but we look at it and we go, wonder what's causing that.
Yeah.
And the problem is we then attract other people with that kind of messaging. So when we hear a tragedy, we go like, for example, like, you know, shootings or something like that. We're like, yeah, but gun control only blah 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 blah, and all it does is, you know, it makes it so only the criminals have gun, and that attracts other people who think that way. But then other people who don't think that way, they see a tragedy and they go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Oh man, if that, I remember, like you said, I remember that happened to my cousin or to, you know, these other people that I once heard it happen to, or man, what if that happened to me? Someone has to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when the demagogue shows up and says, I care more than anyone else.
Mm.
No one should ever have to suffer a tragedy like this. I feel the pain of the, and we watch this and we're rolling our eyes and we're like, yeah, right. Everyone else is eating it up. Why? Because they're the only people who showed up to say that they cared about them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they provided a solution, you know, the thing that's going to make it way worse, and probably was the reason that it was bad in the first place. Now they're just going to triple down on it. And so then we show up and go, you idiots, this isn't going to fix anything. And you say you have a right to health care or a right to safety. That's a positive right. That's not even a real thing. You clearly have never read anything about negative rights. And oh, how much do you know about John Locke? What these people are hearing is, I don't care about you. I just want to call you names and argue with you about something I don't understand.
Mm.
And so if you got one guy going, you idiot, you don't understand negative rights, and another person saying, wow, this is terrible. Man, this is bothering me as well. We ought to do something. Hey, I know what we should do. Something even worse. They're going to go with that because
Yeah.
it sounds like a solution. So what we do is we do what most people do. Instead of trying to get them to intellectually assent to our ideas first, we show them a person. We lead with people. We don't say, oh, eminent domain is being abused across the country and it could lead to people losing their homes. We say, here is this family. They got married in 1997 and they've got these beautiful kids and they got a grandkid coming and tell their story, right? And then turns out they're about to lose their home and they're going to get pennies on the dollar for what it's worth. And they're fighting it in court and being told there's nothing they can do about it. Why? Because mayor such and city council member such so and so, they own the properties adjacent to it, and they want to tear it down so that they can sell it with their properties to a developer for a strip mall or whatever. And so they're doing it for money, and they're tearing this family apart, and everyone's angry and outraged, and we go, and here's who you want to contact. Mayor such and such can be reached at, if you go to our website, we've got all of the email addresses and phone numbers of not the government, not City Hall, the specific
This
mayor,
guy.
the specific city council members, the specific judge, and we're going to contact them. And we're going to do it respectfully, and we'll talk more about that in a bit, but we're going to contact them. And if you don't have anything constructive to say right now because you're pretty upset and don't really have anything nice you want to say, we've got some wording that you can borrow from or copy paste and use, and it explains the whole thing so that we can all respectfully ask for them to back off and do the right thing. And again, if I was watching this and someone said, yeah, we find people who are doing terrible things, and then we respectfully ask them to back off, I'd be like, oh, okay, that sounds great. Yeah, do you watch Care Bears afterwards? Well, here's the thing. That's none of your business what I watch afterwards. But what's more important is that we have 100% success rate, and over the life of our organization, we've had a roughly 90% success rate, and our success rate was lower when we didn't lead with love and respect. It actually
Mm.
went up when we leaned into love and respect, and we can talk more about this. We've had people that are on the wrong side actually understand the error of their ways and come join us, not just in doing the right thing, but in fixing it so it doesn't happen anymore. So yes, it does work.
That's there's a couple things that come to mind. First off, that's a hard pill for, especially for somebody like myself to swallow because I live in the political world. It is.
Yeah.
I'm on X all the time. And, I have to really watch myself because sometimes I'm okay with being forceful because in some cases it might warrant it. But I think you posted
Yeah.
about this a while ago. The vast majority of cases, it makes more sense to lead with empathy, with some logic, rationality, rather
Of
than this
course.
person sucks because they're a tyrant. Yeah, they are a tyrant,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to beat them just by calling him a tyrant. I have to actually address the empathy level. It reminds me of Dexter Taylor's case. I mean,
Yes.
I rant all the time about why the Second Amendment is important, why gun control is wrong, based on principle, based on ideology, and
Yep.
based on whatever. I do all of that. But in a case like Dexter's, I led with him. He was a father. He is a father. Brooklyn native,
Yep.
no
Yep.
criminal record, 10 years in prison. He's in prison right
Nice.
now. People can relate to that because
Yep.
that strikes people at that level. The thing is, especially as libertarians, but I would say it's not just libertarians, we know why things are wrong, but we don't
Yeah.
show why they're wrong. We can tell people why gun control is wrong. Dexter Taylor's story
Yeah.
shows why it's wrong, and that's what I love about what you guys do as well.
Yeah, and so there's actually something called the theory of dissemination of ideas. And if you want to be fancy, you can find like a graphic online, or I can bring one to you, and you can put it up here so people can see it, or you can just make them imagine it. Whichever. This is your show. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But anyway, if you look at it, it kind of shows like the steps from the idea makers who first come up with something, like the innovators who come up with a new idea, or even an idea that's been around, but they're trying to disseminate it and spread it to the population. So they're the beginning of the bell curve. And then a little bit more of the bell curve. This is like a couple percent are like the innovators. And then a few more percent, but still a very small percentage, are like the early adopters. They're the ones who look at new ideas and go, huh, yeah, that makes sense. Let me look into that. Oh, wow, I really like that. I'm going to share this with other people. Then you have like what they call the early majority. These are people that want to see if it works. Okay. And then you've got the late majority. They want to see if other people are already talking about it. Is this popular? And then you've got the laggards. These are the people that may never adopt it. They may just say, yeah, you know what, I'm stuck in my ways, whatever. Technically, you don't really need them because if you have the early and late majority, you got the vast majority of people. Exactly. The reason I bring this up is that we talk like early adopters and innovators. We talk about ideas. Most people talk about people. They talk and they want to see solutions. They don't want to hear why it works necessarily. Maybe they want to hear about that later, but they primarily want to hear what is your solution and does it kind of make sense to me? And then there's another group of people that's like, well, are there other people saying this or is it just you saying this? And so if you can build up this critical mass, you can get them to join you. And so what we're doing is we're adjusting what we primarily talk about to reach the people that we aren't already reaching. We're already reaching all the cerebral people in the room. They either agree with us or disagree with us. We need to reach the people who, and it's frustrating because we look at them and they're like, these people are cattle. No, they're actually like normal. Yeah. We're not normal.
Yeah, we're the weird.
I don't like to use people get mad when I use the A word, so I'll just say we're neuro-libertarian. Okay, we're wired slightly differently. There's nothing wrong with us, just like there's nothing wrong with them. We just think differently. We tend to think ideas, numbers, charts, graphs. We can look at a graph and have an emotional reaction because we see what it represents. Most people look at a graph and go, what's this? And we go, yeah. So the x-axis is this and the y-axis, and they go, all right, so what's this saying? And we go, yeah, so if you have more of this, then you have a lot less of this, and you have less of this, you have a lot more of this. And they go, all right, so what's that mean? Like you have to walk them through it. Mm-hmm. But if you show them a family who's being ripped apart, if you show them someone who's losing their home for no reason, if you show them someone who got arrested at a city council meeting for asking basic questions completely legally, and so she gets arrested and her minor, this is not hypothetical, her minor daughter gets, her, I think 11-year-old daughter gets left in a parking lot at night by the police, and the mother they just arrested isn't allowed to notify anyone to come pick her up. That speaks more to people than a chart. If you then can show them the basis behind why it happened in the first place, you can get them on board. But even before you have to explain it to them, I bet you can get a bunch of them to email the mayor and the city council members and the chief of police, and then I bet it ends up leading to all those charges being dropped, and the mayor and the city attorney and the chief of police all stepping down. Again, this is not hypothetical. That's what happened. Yeah, because we led with people, the people that this is happening to, and the people that are doing it. And it makes all the difference. I want to speak, if I can, very, very quickly on the reaching people from a point of love, because I want to make sure people aren't hearing something I'm not saying. Mm-hmm. I am not talking about being a doormat. I am not talking about saying, hey, I love you, and I don't really like that you're doing this, but I love you. I love you. I love you. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. I mean, you could send that if you want to. I can't stop you, but that's not what I'm talking about. We are insistent and we are persistent and we ramp it up. If the first round of emails don't work, the second round of emails and text messages might work. And if that doesn't work and we start having dozens or hundreds of people showing up to your council meetings, your campaign event, whatever, you're showing up and speaking at in front of you, maybe that will work. And if we get the local media involved where they start making documentaries about what you're doing, which again, this has happened, maybe that will work. And we keep ratcheting it up. So this is not about, it's the mindset that we do it from. I'm not doing this from the mindset of, I want to punish these people, I want them to suffer, and I want them to, essentially disappear or buckle under my will. Of saying, and this is, it has been heavily influenced by my turning to Jesus. Yeah. I know all the times that I shook my fist at God and acted like his enemy, and he forgave me and loved me and sacrificed himself for me. And then he commanded me to do the same for others. Because if God forgive me, I people their enemy. That doesn't mean I let them keep doing it. It means that I come to them from a place of love and a desire for reconciliation, and it's on them to decide what they want to do. So much of what I'm doing now, or pretty much everything that I do now, is heavily influenced by my Christian faith. You know, when I think of all the times that God has loved and forgiven me, when I was being his enemy, it makes sense that he wants me to love and forgive my enemy. And so, you know, when I'm reaching out to these corrupt public officials and I'm thinking about the things that they've done to other people, I know that those things in many ways pale in comparison to all the times that I've thumbed my nose at God. And his response wasn't to turn around on me and condemn me and say, I want nothing to do with you anymore, and to basically throw me away. His response to that was to say, I love you. I'm still offering forgiveness to you if you accept it. And that's up to you to decide whether or not you accept it. And so when we reach out to these public officials, we are persistent, we are insistent, we are consistent. We don't just roll over and let them do whatever they want. We are insisting they do the right thing, but we do it from a legitimate place of love and a desire for reconciliation. And then ultimately it's up to them to decide if they're going to accept that or not. Are they going to join us in doing the right thing? Are they going to just back off for political expediency purposes? Are they going to resign because they don't even want to do it? Or are they going to dig in their heels and we end up winning anyway? Whichever they choose, we're going to win. But if we approach it from that standpoint, then we're doing so in a way that, again, has given us a 100% success rate in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and there's a lot there. I mean, you know, you know, we've had this conversation before, but it's hard to come with that kind of approach because people like me, we always want to bash them over the head or cyberbully them into
Yes.
into surrender. And you know, and there's times for being forceful. I mean, if you look at the example of Jesus, most of the time he led with love, but there were times where he was more harsh. But it was way more often that he led with love and with reconciliation than with being harsh. And it's interesting because what you said reminded me of the parable that Jesus told about the man who owed a debt to the king, and the king forgave
Yeah.
that debt. And then this same guy goes to another
Yep.
servant who owed him money and didn't have that same level of grace, had him thrown in prison. And then the king found out, and he was like, "Wait a minute, I forgave your debt, and you couldn't even forgive like the $5 that this guy owed you. You're going to jail too."
Yeah. Yeah.
In that
Yep.
example played
Exactly.
out in the word. And so I'm not surprised that you started having even more success when you led with, well, I'll just call it what it is, led with a more Christ-like approach to fighting this
Yeah.
injustice.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, You Are the Power is not a religious organization in and of itself. We have people of all different walks of faith and people that don't have any religious faith. So it's not, we are not a quote unquote Christian organization. Everything that I do it to glorify God. So, and that includes what I do now at You Are the Power. So I can't help but have anything that I do, including at You Are the Power, to be a part of my witness. You mentioned the times that Christ would flip tables and call people vipers and call them hypocrites and blind guides and all of this. The funny thing about that is all of that came from a place of love as well.
Did.
At any point, if someone turns and repents and turns to him, his forgiveness is there. I mean, there's way more harsh stuff in going through like the book of Jeremiah or like a lot of the Old Testament stuff, and you'll see him saying, everything you touch is gonna turn to death, and you'll be covered in boils and like all this stuff. And then he'll say, but if you turn to me, then the opposite of that will happen.
Mhm.
And so even that was from a legitimate, we'll call it a desire for reconciliation, even though God knows how everything turns out.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, it was setting that contrast, but even that contrast was done in love. And so we're, especially where we don't have the benefit of knowing whether they're going to turn to us or not. I think it was Charles Spurgeon who said, if I knew who the elect were and who the elect weren't, I wouldn't waste my time preaching to everyone. But since I don't, I just assume everyone potentially is the elect, and so I preach to them regardless. I know I just butchered that quote, but that's basically what he said. And so in the same way, I don't know which officials are going to say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how terrible this was. I never really thought about it, or I didn't know that this agency that I was at the top of was actually this terrible. How can I join you and help? I don't know which ones are going to say, you know what, I can't take this heat. I'll just back off and hopefully they'll leave me alone and whatever. And I don't know which ones are going to dig in their heels and then eventually resign in disgrace. But if we lead from that place of a desire for reconciliation, we are essentially above reproach. They can't say, oh, well, they were threatening my life, or, oh, they were just being unreasonable. All they can say is they said I was doing the wrong thing. And yeah, they're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then now what are you going to do? So ultimately, that's what we've led with. Like I said, if a couple, 2, 3 years ago, if someone were to tell me that this would work at all, and then would work even better, the more loving and as you said, like, Christ centered in how we were doing this, I would go, I don't know. I mean, it sounds good. I've always been a guy for magnanimity, and I don't really, even when I'm being snarky, I don't like really like going after people in a real visceral way. That's just never been my style. But I also am like, I don't know how well this is going to work. Going, hey, why don't you join us? Turns out it does work. I mean, the successes we've had in Georgia were precipitated by a tremendous amount of work and by, I believe, a moving of the spirit. But then when you have Candace Brose, who was like our Saul, like she was like the greatest persecutor in that area in Georgia. She was like our greatest opponent. And she had her road to Damascus moment and is now like literally on a regular call basis with Ryan, our volunteer organizer. You've spoken with him.
Mhm.
And they communicate regularly on how to make it so that their agency is correctly going after actual abusers
Right.
and leaving innocent people alone. And that came from a desire for reconciliation. And I would say we're getting it.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most powerful parts of this, that you actually were so effective that you turned around somebody who was defending the system into somebody who is now working to make it more just and more fair. And
Yeah.
you don't do that by beating people over the head. I mean, as much as I would like that to be the case, you don't accomplish that. I mean, it doesn't work that way. And to me, I feel like, in general, I feel like I've gotten a lot better about it. I tend to, if I get angry, if I really want to attack something, I'll just use humor to do it, because then I'm not like
Yeah.
getting myself in a bad headspace, and I'm not being a total bully or a jerk to the other person. It takes a lot for
Yeah.
me to get to that
Yeah.
point anyway. So, but still, I think that this works. But I want to transition to talking about like the anatomy of You Are the Power campaign. Like, can you walk me
Yeah.
through how it works? Like, you first get the case, and then I know you vet it. Can you just walk us through that process of the step by step of what happens when you get a case to completion?
Sure. So, and this is actually something that's continuously being streamlined. So I'm going to give you like our most recent iteration. Like how we do it now is even that much more streamlined than like this time last year. It's really just it's incredible how we do things. So when a cause comes in, whether it comes in from one of our members or from something one of us sees, or someone that reaches out to us through our website at youarethepower.net. However we get the cause, it is brought to our cause coordinator. Her name's Victoria. And what she does is she gets all of the relevant information. She reaches out to the people that, are being affected by this. She gets every bit of information she can. And then she works with our cause vetting volunteer team. Now, if it is a non-CPS case, that's usually, I'm trying to present this as uncomplicated as possible.
Yeah.
But basically, we have our non-family reunification cases like Rebecca Massey when she got arrested for speaking at her city council meeting or something like that. Those go through there are volunteers and the regional organizers in whatever region that happened in. They kind of work on that cause vetting together to make sure we have all the relevant facts. If it's through, if it's being done, if it's one of our family reunification cases, that goes to an entirely dedicated organization called the Family Reunification Program, which includes much heavier levels of vetting. Rebecca Massey's case took about 3 to 5 hours of reviewing body cam footage. Our family reunification cases, they're upwards of 300 hours of vetting. We have like forensic experts that come in and look at the medical records and help build a medical narrative that we can work from. And like it's just the level of vetting on that is, both of them have very thorough vetting. But the level of vetting with the family reunification, we had to spin it into its own thing. We've been told by investigative journalists and attorneys that no one else is doing this on the level we are. And we're literally just like, we've been figuring, kind of winging it for the last 3 years, and it's turning into this incredibly well-oiled machine. But anyway, during the course of that,
really quick,
yeah, sure.
So why put so many hours into vetting a case? I mean, obviously you have to vet them, but you put a lot of time into this and a lot of energy. What prompted that, or what is the purpose of that?
I never want us to present something that turns out to be a lie. I never, especially if it's someone that's being accused of abuse. Because, I mean, in all reality, there are people that reach out to us and they said they got arrested at their city council meeting for one thing. And we look at it and it's like, yeah, you didn't tell us the whole story here. Maybe they went a little overboard, or sometimes maybe they didn't go overboard. Maybe they were completely justified in arresting you, or whatever it is. That's bad enough. If I put something out like that, that's egg on our face. If I have people that put in energy to call for children to be returned to parents, and it turns out they actually abused them, or maybe they were being neglectful, or maybe we weren't being told the whole story, that there was someone else that was involved that might have been doing abusive things, anything like that, we necessarily have our reputation ruined. I would never want to be involved with an organization that did that. You can't come back from that and be like, well, I mean, yeah, that one time, because now we're like the officials we're targeting. Well, yeah, we did incorrect. We did wrongfully accuse these people of abuse, but what about all these other times of actual abusers? I look at them and go, well, how do we know those were legitimate? And that would be the exact same thing that people could necessarily and rightfully ask me, and I wouldn't have a good answer. So, like, when we first heard about the Hernandez family, that was when this heavy level of vetting started. I was like, we had, it was much more ad hoc back then, but I was like, all hands on deck. We are all vetting this. Like, there's no way that we're going to side with abusers. And so I want us to be like, I want to err on the side of not just knowing that the truth is on our side, but that there's not a shadow of a doubt. There are multiple causes right now that we probably could go forward with, but we're waiting for just one more deposition, just one more, piece of evidence, just one more release of footage or a chain of emails or whatever. And even if there's more than likely nothing there, we want to be able to put our heads on pillows at night and say, we put stuff out there and we knew all of the relevant facts. So that's very important. Now, in the vetting process, we determine, obviously, is this true? And do we know all the details? Like, are the people we're representing in the right beyond a shadow of a glimmer of a doubt? Okay. The next thing is, in the course of this vetting, and this usually is addressed much earlier on, like when we're just looking at like the accusations of the relevant facts, like, is this something we can build a movement around? Like, okay, someone could reach out to us and say, I got a ticket for going 20 miles over the speed limit, but I was going the speed limit. Now, they may have all the facts, right? They may have legitimately been wrongfully pulled over and given a ticket for speeding. I can't build a movement around that. I can't get people excited to contact the chief of police and say, I demand justice for the ticket guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not to say that, like, and in a situation like that, we might actually, like, just behind the scenes send an email out or reach out to that official and go, we got evidence here that, that this person wasn't actually speeding or whatever. Like, we might do something like that. But, we can't go public with a campaign, a pressure campaign to get the officials to buckle and to finally realize that, Steve wasn't speeding or whatever. So, like, we'll get stuff like that where there's just I can't build a movement around.
Right. Right.
Um, we do additional vetting. We do additional vetting, and I want to almost call it like the Jackie Robinson effect. Like when I'm forgetting his name now. Branch Rickey, when he decided to have like the first black Major League Baseball player be Jackie Robinson, he's like, listen, there are some Negro League players that are like legitimately better than Jackie, but I want the first one to be above reproach. I want him to have
Mm.
like no kind of skeletons. I want him to have no kind of anything where people can go, see, look, they're all criminals because like, he got drunk once or something like that. I want this guy to be as squeaky clean as humanly possible because I want to then be able to introduce, other black players and other players of other colors who may not all be, perfect angels, just like the white players aren't perfect angels. But I want that first introduction to be like that. In a similar fashion, there are times, and it pains me, but there are times we've not taken on causes because we look at the people that have come to us, and these are people that the rest of the community wasn't really upset that they got in trouble.
Mm.
And again, they might be in the right, and we might even behind the scenes help them out. But I don't want to try to build a movement around someone who is going to use that momentum to remind everyone why everyone else already didn't like them.
Right.
And so like we even do that. Like, are these sympathetic characters? And so we are, I mean, it's funny when we get occasionally we'll get accusations that we kind of go off half cocked, and it's like, no, 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 no. We not only don't go off half cocked, we go through what some might say is like painfully over fastidious vetting and checking of these causes. Over the course of that, we're also gathering, if we are going to take on the cause, all the relevant information we need. Who are the specific individuals, not just the agencies or the departments or who are the specific individuals who did this? What is the timeline of what happened here?
Mm.
Are there any emails or other communications that were exchanged between, relevant parties? Is there any other additional, so for example, when we had a rash of city councils that were all around the same time, they were threatening charities with arrest if they kept feeding people that were in need.
Yeah.
And it was all kind of happening at the same time. Well, it turned out it was because all of their COVID money was about to have to be given back unless they spent it on something that they were allowed to spend it on. And alleviation of homelessness was one of the things they were allowed to spend it on. And so they were going out and doing these panicked agreements with NGOs to solve the homelessness crisis. But that doesn't work if there are other people that are fixing it for zero taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
You can't try to convince the taxpayers like, oh yeah, we're spending $20 million on this. It's like, yeah, well, these people are doing it for nothing. Like for just donate, a few thousand donated dollars. And so they were all kind of doing it at the same time. In our vetting, we learned that. So like we're doing additional like auxiliary research of like, why would they even do this in the first place? It's how we found out about Title 40 of the Social Security Act, and that's leading to this sort of perverse incentive to pay CPS agencies for every time that they accuse someone of abuse, which is leading to more accusations of abuse. So during that, one of the benefits of taking that long and being that thorough in our vetting is that we learn a lot more about like why it's actually happening. So if all of that happens and we determine that, that this is a cause we're moving forward with, we come up with a game plan. We, these are the officials that we're going to reach out to. These are their email addresses. Sometimes we use their phone numbers as well. And then we make a page on our website that has all of the relevant, all the information about like a kind of an abbreviated version of the information about the cause, and which we regularly update as needed. And then we put the officials that we're targeting, and then we give a wording template that people can use. Because again, when they'll hear this stuff, very often you hear about someone who just had their children wrongfully taken from them. You might not have the most constructive wording to reach out to the people doing this right then. Or some people just, maybe they're not ready to write paragraphs intelligently, articulately about a subject. They'll just be like, give these kids back or whatever, which is fine. But if they want to have something more detailed, then they can borrow from or just copy paste our wording template. It's right there. And then they can reach out to these officials that way. So we get that set up. And then we start making the content. We do posts, we do photos that show these families or show what happened. Videos, if there's the video of Rebecca Massey getting arrested went viral. We put that stuff out there, and it's all directed to getting people to understand how important this is, to understand why they should want to get involved, and then immediately directing them to that page that they can go to get involved. And we've had an incredibly high rate of conversion there because we're basically asking people to spend about 2 minutes helping us.
Yeah.
Put that, send out these emails, maybe 5 minutes. Send out these emails, text messages, whatever. We are even giving you the wording. Share our posts, tag people that you think might be interested in this in the replies or the comments or whatever. Reach out, tag these officials on their social media and tell them that they're on, that you got your eye on them for what they're going to do about this. And 5 minutes later, they've done a lot of really good activism for us. And so that's sort of the, I guess, soup to nuts. And then it's really just rinse and repeat from there. So we give updates as they're available. Usually the updates are, well, it's one of two things. It's either they're digging their heels in, or they're backing off and doing the right thing. And if needed, we say, okay, now here's what we want you to call for now. And we just keep giving updates, and we keep putting the pressure on. We're also directly reaching out to these officials ourselves, saying, listen, we want to be a part of this. So while they're getting all these people reaching out to them, we're also reaching out to them directly and saying, we want to both be on the right side here. How can we make this work? And so we're trying to negotiate with them and reconcile with them while that's happening. And we just keep rinsing and repeating until we win.
Awesome. I would like to know, because you've been doing this for a little while now, and you talked about how you put it out there on social media, you ask people to participate, and you show them that it doesn't take a day. You don't have to give a day and go and protest unless you're able to do that, unless you want to.
Yeah.
What has been the response from people who have been helping in this way, like whether it's using your template to write an email, or making a post, or sharing one of your posts, or have you gotten any feedback about how maybe it may have affected them to be able to participate in this, even if it's just a little something?
Absolutely. No, we've been getting actually testimonials from people saying that, like, not only do they feel more empowered to do things, or I guess I say, not only do they feel like they have a better understanding of the root cause of these issues, that, these perverse incentives lead human beings to treat human beings like something other than human beings, that it's like really at its core, it's just people that are perversely incentivized to treat the rest of us like they aren't people. But it also makes them feel more empowered that they can actually do something about it, because, very often, and it's why, like, I hesitated for so I just posted earlier today, a picture of that I had posted like over 10 years ago now. It's a picture of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and his wife Melania. And I said, this was back in 2015, and I wrote, "You're all being scammed by con artists." Like, they're all friends, right? Like, and so I posted that, and I hemmed and hawed about posting that for like the past 4 or 5 days, because I'm like, not that it's wrong, but I'm like, but now what? Like, okay, I've said this. Now what am I giving people to do? And the reason that I now have that hesitation is because in everything else I do, I'm not just saying like, hey, remember how we were right about this? It's more like, now I give people things and say, and here's how we're going to fix it. And that really, like, just, it takes you out of that mindset of there's nothing I can do about it. It's like, actually, there is a lot you can do about it. And if we continue doing these things, we can grow a bigger and bigger and more involved movement that can do even bigger things. One day we might actually be able to affect things at the federal level, even without getting involved in elections or anything else, by just reaching such a critical mass that they can't ignore the millions, tens of millions of us demanding that they do the right things. So that's the feedback that we get a lot of the time, is that, like, instead of just getting people angry, we're giving them something that they can do that actually makes them feel like they're being a part of it. And what we notice is a lot of people will start off with like, yeah, they're sending emails, they're sharing, they become a member, they join our Facebook group, they download the app. If there's an event nearby in town, they show up. Suddenly they're driving 5 hours every day to be at a court case for one of the families we're helping. And before they know it, it's like a part-time job for them. And what I tell people is, give whatever you can give now. That still, don't give so much that you burn out, time or money. Give what you are comfortable giving and what you feel compelled and driven to give. because if you do it that way, then you'll never tire of it. If you're only giving me, and it'll be different from week to week. Maybe one week you've got nothing for me. You're going on vacation or you've just got a rough week in front of you and you don't even have time to send out an email. But the next week you got time to share posts. And the week after that, you've got time to show up and even to help put together a rally that we're having in front of a county council or something like that. Fantastic. Maybe one week you've got nothing you can donate. You're in between paychecks and the finances are low. Maybe the next week you could give us $20. Maybe you get a bonus the following week and you can give us $100 or $500 or whatever. Whatever you do it. I would much rather that your giving be something that is comfortable for you, you feel compelled to do it, and you do it over the long term, than for you to get really, really involved and feel obligated to do as much as you can and burn yourself out and eventually kind of step back from it because it just felt like too much. Let's not do that. Let's do I'm not trying to burn people out. It's just the opposite. I want people to shine bright and be excited. I want our heat to not just be dissipated into heat. I want it to be focused into a laser that actually accomplishes change. So let's do it.
Yeah, yeah. God loves a cheerful giver, right? I mean, and if you're giving in a way,
yes,
giving of your time or of your money or whatever, your effort in a way that fits into your life, then yeah, you are more likely to do this over the long term because you're not wearing yourself out. And it's almost like, in a sense, you're building kind of a community, like a you are the power community that mobilizes when there's an injustice. Like if you send something out, I'm sure through a newsletter, this family's being affected by this local government or this state agency. It's like you've got a community of activists that are willing to do what they can. And some of them is some of it is big and some of it are smaller, but they all add up to something huge to mobilize against the injustice that we're seeing. And I think that's incredible.
The last day of the Hernandez trial, which was the day that they were, thank God, found not guilty. Before I wasn't able to be there for the entire week plus, but I did drive up for the day that we expected that the verdict was going to happen, which was that Friday. Mm-hmm. And so we were there. Tash and I got there, and one of the first things that happened when we all got together, and there was, gosh, I think about maybe 50 of us there, 50 or give or take of us there. And we all got together and we prayed. And we were all there together in this hallway. And the security there, the sheriff's, I think it was the sheriff's department that did the security, they had come to love us. Even though we were there for the defense, they had come to love us because we'd show up and we'd be cheerful going through security and we'd ask them how they were doing. And I think some of the people would get them coffee and stuff like that. We'd go into an area and yeah, we were coming in with our, our shirts and our, I think some people sometimes would bring signs or whatever, but we always left every place that we came to cleaner than we left it when we got there. And so there was just this again, we're there to find out if Matt and Tucky Hernandez are about to go to prison for 40 years, for upwards of 40 years, and never see their children again, right? And probably never see each other again either. And yet we were there with such a level of, obviously not happiness, while we were waiting, but just a level of good cheer. We were keeping Matt and Tucky as calm as possible and just letting them know, even if this doesn't go well, we're here. We're going to do the appeal. We're going to fight this every step of the way. The funny Tucky, the wife, was unflappable. She never blinked the whole time. Anyway, it's a whole other subject, but she, and we were there, and it was a community. It was a family. Some of the people, the most they had done was they were showing up every day and they had shared the content. One of those families had donated $10,000 to be able to make sure that the Hernandez family had the expert witnesses they needed. And they are not multimillionaires. That was a significant donation for them to make. But they weren't going to just show up and rah-rah. They were going to give. It didn't, mess them up financially. But they told me, they said, we got a $20,000 car instead of a $30,000 car. They said, we're going to make this sacrifice because that's what matters most to us. So yeah, no, absolutely. The community describes it. I do have to just give a huge shout out to Tucky Hernandez. So just everyone listening to this, put yourself in the mindset of you've been fighting for 2 years to get your kids back. There's been this looming threat of you going to jail, even though you know you've done nothing wrong. You
Mm.
finally have at some point, the family court said that your kids can go back to live with family and you can have visitation with them. You can't have the kids back until the charges are dropped. And you think, well, that part will probably be easy. You're being assured that part will be easy because, it's a criminal court. There's a higher standard of burden of proof, innocent until proven guilty. It's not just arbitrarily what the family court judge is deciding. There's a jury of your peers. There's discovery. The last 3 trials that we've worked on, they were all either the case was thrown out or they were found not guilty. And so you think, okay, all right, good, I can breathe a sigh of relief. Then your trial happens and the judge doesn't allow any exonerating evidence to be presented. They aren't allowed to hear from the medical experts who diagnosed your child with a chronic health condition. They weren't allowed to hear from the arresting officer who didn't think you did anything wrong. They weren't allowed to hear from the family court judge or from DFACS, the CPS agency, who closed out their cases because there was no evidence of abuse. All the jury was allowed to see was the x-ray of Emma's fractures in her leg and the opinion of the child abuse pediatrician that went, yeah, that looks like abuse to me. That's all they were allowed to see. And thank God that jury saw through the fix that the judge was doing and voted not guilty on all counts. But imagine before that part, you're there, you just have been watching a judge straight up railroad you in front of you, and it's obvious that the court wants you in prison for a very, very long time. And you got everyone around you going, no, well, whatever happens, we'll fight it. We'll go to appeals. We'll go. But you already know if you are found guilty, you go to prison then. They're not going to let you go home and fight this. You are going to prison now. And so is your wife or your husband, whichever one you're identifying with here. So imagine you're in that situation, okay? Now, if you're like me, you're going to be more like Matt Hernandez, who had like a normal human level of fear of this whole thing, right? Like, he's scared when the verdict is finally read, he's tearing up, he's crying, he's so relieved, right? That's you and me. That's how we're gonna deal with this. And probably most people watching this. Tucky was unflappable. She was just, yep. And so I went up to Tucky afterwards. And, I hug Matt, who's trembling and I'm probably trembling too. I don't know if I was feeling him trembling or me trembling. And I said, I told you this was going to, I told you that, that God was working here and we're still with you. We're going to fight. Cause they then had to petition the family court to get their kids back. I said, we're not leaving you. And I'm going to see you in church on Sunday. And he's like, okay. I go up to Tucky. I shake her. There is no trembling. I said, I told you, same thing that I said to her. And she said, I was never worried. God had this.
Okay. I'm not surprised. I remember when I interviewed her, because I interviewed both of them. And I remember.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember getting off of the phone with her. I'm like, that is a tough lady. I'm like, she is tough.
Yeah. So anyway, if people do the zombie apocalypse, who do you have in your corner? Tucky Hernandez.
Yes.
And her family, the whole family can be, obviously I don't want to split up the family. The whole family will be there. I'm picking them because of Tucky, because I know Tucky will be fine. We'll be down in the basement. Tucky will be up there just slaying the zombies left and right. So yeah, that's my
most definitely. There was something I wanted to ask. And it was one thing that you hit me with right just now. It was like, y'all are in there buying coffee for the enemy and being friendly and stuff like that. And like, that's how it comes off to me. But then it's like, what does the word say? That Roman centurion came to Jesus and said, my son is sick or has a demon. I can't remember which it was. Can you help? Now, was subjugating Judea and Samaria. They were enslaving them, basically. Yeah. They were subjugating them, and Jesus healed the guy's son. We don't have an excuse if he can do that. So to me, it's
not only.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so not only did he heal his, I forget if it was son or a servant, but not only did he heal him, but when he said, I'll go with you. And the centurion says, you don't need to go with me. I know that I have people that are under me. I order them to do something and it's done. I don't have to go.
Mhm.
And so I know that you can do the same thing. And so not only does Jesus say, go back and you'll see that he was healed, he turns to the crowd, to the Jewish crowd,
Mhm.
to commend this Gentile Roman persecutor of them and their people for his incredible faith. And again, these were the things that if you were a Pharisee made you seethe, because what Jesus was doing there was saying your status as God's chosen or one of the nations, none of that means anything. It is your faith and your posture towards God. And it's just it's what I love so much about the Gospels in general, but just those stories. It just really drives home that like it really, we come, and it really drives home another thing. I know I'm evangelizing, but
Reach.
everything we bring to God is so broken and so covered in our filth and our imperfections and our sin. It's literally it's everything we bring to him. And I think this is even in scripture. Everything we bring to him is like filthy rags. And yet not only does he love us and see our heart for doing that, and even our motivation isn't coming from the right place. Like it very often is like there's at least somewhat of a fear of punishment, or I hope that I'll get blessing from it. But if we have a genuine sincere desire to bring it to God, even if it's not perfectly sincere, even though it's not perfectly sincere, it's the fact that we do it that makes him love us so. It's not any of the other things that we put importance on. It's our posture towards God. And it really, it is where our hope and our assurance should come from. That it literally does. Yeah, no, the story is we suck, but it's okay because like he already forgave us and offered us that forgiveness and that love. Anyway, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll just say this before I get to the next question. I mean,
You just
Jesus,
muted yourself.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't just commend him for having faith. He said, "I have not seen a greater faith I have not seen a greater faith in all of Israel." I mean, and John the Baptist was still around then. John the Baptist
Yeah.
would be like, "Hey, hold on." But when Jesus says that, he's not using hyperbole. He means what he says. And
No.
to me, that's the
Yeah.
kind of faith that Tucky had because she just knew it
Yeah.
was going to work out, and that's
She knew.
exactly what the centurion did. I wanted to
Yeah,
find
she knew.
yeah. So in these cases where you win, what has the feedback been like from the other end, from the government, from the local officials who were involved in whatever was going on, whether it was taking people's children or shutting down charities?
Yeah.
What did they say in response to them finally capitulating? Like, how did they handle that?
So usually if they say something, which I think more often than not, they don't necessarily directly address it.
Mhm.
If they do say something, it is usually either like, well, I'm glad we were able to work this out. And, yeah, we've always been on the side that happened with the city councils that were threatening charities with arrest. They immediately were like, oh, we're so glad that this big misunderstanding, we've always been on the side of private initiatives to get out there and help people in need. And by gum, we're so glad that you guys came out to us and we're all on the same page here, which is fine. Like, okay, great. Sometimes reconciliation looks like, yeah, we were always on your side. Okay, great. That it is what it is. But so usually it's like that. Every once in a while, we'll get people who will be like, well, we've chosen to do this, but I just want to make it clear that it's not because of all this stuff. You can't just come and give us a hard time and harass us and bully us. We looked into this and did the right thing, but it had nothing to do with the tens of thousands of people that contacted us about it. It was completely coincidental. Like, so they'll say something like that. I'm obviously being facetious in how I presented it, but it's something like that. But that's very rare. Usually if they say anything, it's with a hint of a combination of legitimate magnanimity, like, yeah, we want it. Okay, we're glad that we're doing the right thing here. And the political expediency, like, oh yes, we've always been good friends on this issue. And it's like, no, we weren't, but okay. And and on our side, we're like, hey, thanks for doing that. Like we'll even share it and go, thanks so much for doing the right thing. Very often they resign and say nothing. So that happens too. But yeah, a lot of the time they just kind of back off and we don't necessarily hear a lot from them one way or another. other. Now, when we were a little bit more on the visceral end and weren't quite as, I mean, we've always said, reach out to these people respectfully.
Right.
But I think we've learned, A, to provide that wording template, which is helpful, and B, to like really drive home, like, no, seriously, be respectful. We want reconciliation. We don't want like carnage. We want like the right thing to happen here. And so I think in the past we'd sometimes get like maybe more private feedback, like, hey, your guys were kind of mean. Like they'd, if you're upset about this, reach out to us and let us know. But like, some of this stuff seems like a threat, like and stuff like that. We don't get as much of that anymore, and I think that's directly reflected in the fact that we lead by saying, I did the video, and I think you shared it as well. I did that video to Brian Kemp, and I didn't call him a tyrant, and I didn't say, oh, you're a child trafficker. I didn't do any of that. I talked to him man to man, husband to husband, and from the fact that he's a father. Yeah. And I walked him through. Imagine if when your kids were little, one of them had, some swelling in their legs, and you and your wife took them to the hospital and all of that. And that's the posture we lead with. He ended up signing Ridge's Law and having zero objection to it, going through. It's a very closed system in Georgia. If he didn't want that to get a floor vote, it wasn't going to get a floor vote. Yeah. Not only did it get a floor vote, it passed. It didn't even pass by party line. It passed unanimously. So, I have to think that if I had come at him like, the tree of liberty is waiting for your blood, tyrant, like I think maybe it might have gone differently at the very least. And possibly it wouldn't have even happened. Because we came to them from the standpoint of, listen, this isn't right. You wouldn't want this to happen to you. I wouldn't want this to happen to me. You're in a position to stop this. So join us in stopping this so we can thank you for it. And that's why I made a point of thanking Brian Kemp and thanking everyone that was involved in it, and thanking Candace Brose, because they did the right thing. And so, the feedback we get, if they give it at all, has largely been like positive. Some of it's been positive for legitimate reasons, and some of it's been positive for political reasons. But either way, it's been mostly positive.
Awesome.
Oh, and adding to that, I think part of the reason we haven't gotten a lot of negative feedback is because what negative feedback are they going to provide? That we pointed out something bad that happened, and that we respectfully reached out to them, and that we respectfully asked from a place of love and reconciliation for them to do the right thing. Like, what negative thing could they say about it?
Yeah, exactly. And there was one thing I did want to ask about too. I mean, as far as ideology is concerned, I mean, obviously you're a libertarian. The people I've talked to in your organization have been libertarian, but how does ideology play into this? I mean, because do you also end up find yourself working with people who are more left-leaning, Democrat or Republican or independent? Can you kind of describe that dynamic for me?
Our membership is across the board. The more that it widens out, obviously we have a disproportionately high number of libertarians, but our membership across the board is across, when we were working with and continue to work with like charities that are helping people, very often, not always, but very often they tend to lean towards the left. But not always. Very often when we're dealing with people that are working with like, fighting against towards the right, we work with people across the board. Elected officials that we've worked with are Democrats and Republicans and independent and nonpartisan races. We're all over the place. At its core, the principle of human respect that You Are the Power is built upon is, I believe, the best, most accurate, and most actionable distillation of libertarian philosophy that is in existence. It's why we use it. So we are libertarian in terms of like small L libertarian philosophy, in terms of our belief of how human beings should interact with one another from a place of respecting people, one another, and ourselves as individual human beings. But in terms of who we will work with, we don't do purity tests. We don't even do like are you kind of with us test. Our test is this. Would you like to help us on this cause? Would you like to write an email or share a post or come to an event? Come in your MAGA hat. Come in your I don't know, not a lot of people wear Kamala hats, but come in your, I don't know, Biden hat, your RFK hat. I don't care. Come in your I don't vote because voting is violence hat. I don't care. Come with your cross on. Come with whatever other religious affiliation that you have. None of that. What matters in this moment is, do you agree with us on this issue, and do you want to help us to have it reconciled in a way that is agreeable for everyone? And if and where we are demanding respectfully to be respected as individual human beings. If so, then you've passed the litmus test. And we allow, and we don't even ask them that. We just assume by their being involved that they've passed it. So it really, yeah. So we are both, I would say, like, we are hyper libertarian in terms of the underlying philosophy behind what we do, but ultimately, in terms of our action and who is involved with it, it is, you would think that we're completely unpolitical because in terms of like having a political philosophy, because we're open to everyone. Our volunteer leaders are across the political spectrum, and I like it that way. I like the fact that if these folks weren't working together and I left them alone over there on social media, they'd probably be arguing with each other. But instead, we got them working together, and in the process, realizing that we have way more in common with each other than we have different from one another.
That's a very interesting point, because this work, there's a lot, it's multifaceted. It has a lot of benefits. One, you're helping people. That's the first benefit. People are getting put upon by the government, and you're helping to stop that. But it's also a unifier, because I don't care who you vote for. Nobody wants to see parents going to prison when they didn't abuse their child. Nobody wants to see families split up for no good reason. Nobody. Well, maybe a few people,
No one.
I don't know, but nobody wants to see that.
Very few people want that.
Yeah, I mean, even other examples. Nobody wants to see police mistreating people for no good reason, and those things are unifiers. And I like how, in this way, you are unifying people by showing them, hey, I don't care what you believe politically. I don't care who you vote for. Look at what's happening here. You want to help? Here's how you can help. I love how that kind of brings people together, rather than just saying, you know what, I don't like who you vote for, the uniparty sucks or whatever. To me, there's room for that. But then at the end of the day, if somebody votes Republican, I have no problem working with them to end the death penalty, or doing other things as well. I think it's great.
If someone wants to show up to one of our rallies and help with, getting attention for what we're doing, and sending emails to officials, and donating their time and money, and sharing our content, and the whole time, every time they show up to our events, they wear a shirt that says, "I love the status quo in its entirety." I disagree with you heavily. But for whatever reason, you've decided to work with me on this, and God bless you for it. And so I really don't, I guess I do have a litmus test. If you're one of those rare people that says, I like when innocent parents have their children taken from them and then they go to prison for it, and then you probably, but again, this is self-selecting. You've self-opted out. If for some reason you still then share our content, despite, I want to say, because this isn't even a litmus test. If you think that, then you probably aren't going to share our content. Exactly. But if you're one of those people that goes, you know what? I really like when innocent parents have their kids taken from them and they go to prison for no reason. But for some reason, I just want to share this post and write this email to these officials. Well, then, you know what, pal? I'm going to let you in this one time. Like, I'm not policing people's thoughts. Mm-hmm. I'm encouraging them to join us in this action. And all along the way, I'm telling them why we're doing it. It's, yes, we are doing this to help people. We are doing this to drive home the point that we need to be respected as individual human beings. And if you're with that, great. If you're not with that, great. Thank you for helping anyway. And here's what happens there, because I know a lot of libertarians are listening to this right now and absolutely seething, because they're like, no, but they don't know. You didn't tell them about property rights, or you didn't tell them about this. They walked away and never even heard about Rothbard. And the thing is, they'll be ready for that if and when they're ready for that. And here's another thing that's really going to bother you. They may never be ready for that, which means that the absolute worst case scenario is that we have utilized our political opposition to do good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that again. The people that we're always fighting against, who are voting for the status quo that is being imposed upon us more and more every day, we actually got them to join us in undoing some of that. And then they went back to doing whatever they were going to do anyway. And if they stick around and go, hey, what's this whole human respect thing about? Well, now we got a chance to do that. Exactly. It's the whole like belong before you believe model. Help us with this thing. And if we can convince you of our ideas along the way, fantastic. If not, fantastic. Because if we couldn't convince you this way, we definitely weren't going to convince you by like calling you a libtard or a conservative or whatever, and you know, and beating you over the head with like quotes from Milton Friedman or whatever. Like that has its time and place too. That can be cathartic, but it's not going to get, if this didn't get them, that wasn't going to get them, nothing was going to get them, but we still got them to do the right thing. You mentioned how this kind of work gets people to see how they have more in common than they have, you know, different from one another, how they have more that they actually agree with than that they oppose each other on. That's the opposite of what politics does. We even see this within like libertarian politics. If you and I decided we were going to run for, I don't know, well, I'll say a race. I won't even say like an internal Libertarian Party thing. Like, let's say you and I ran, we both lived in Libertyville, and we both decide that we're going to be the mayor of Libertyville. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we're friends. We're really good friends. And we agree with each other like 99.5% of the time. There's like two minor little nothing issues that we disagree on. One of us has to win, Jeff, which means you have to lose, Jeff. And so now I have to go out there, and when and you got to do this too. When we go out there and campaign, I have to, even as I go, now Jeff is my dear friend, but I've been on his podcast so many times. I can't count the number of times we've destroyed, rebuilt, and then redestroyed white supremacy together. But I'll tell you guys something. That 0.5% that Jeff and I disagree on, that's irredeemable. That 0.5% is so much more important than the 99.5% of stuff that we agree on, that not only do you have to care more about that than the much bigger amount that we agree on, but you got to vote for me and not him. Because if you vote for him, that 0.5% is going to happen. Yeah. If you vote for me, that 0.5% might still happen, but I'll try to make it not happen. And so so what happens over time, even if it's just you and me constantly running against each other, okay? We're still friends, but it's 1.5% and it's 2.5%, or maybe it's the same 0.5%, but we just keep widening that rift, and it goes from, this is really important, guys, you need to vote for me over this 0.5%, to this is, if Jeff gets in, he's going to undo everything I've done for the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever. And with that 0.5%, things are going to be ruined. At some point, that 0.5% becomes an existential threat to Libertyville. And frankly, why are we even letting Jeff live here anymore? Now, this is, and you'd have to do the same thing on your side. That 0.5% is why everything's being destroyed here, which means now people have to, before they even decide who they want to vote for, they have to decide which tribe they're in, and consequently which tribe they hate, because they can't just disagree with that side. That side is a threat to everything that we've ever built. And so we see this with Republicans and Democrats, and meanwhile we sit here and go, you guys are the same. Like, there's so little difference between you, but to them, it's everything. And then we laugh at them and go, how can you possibly think that there's so much difference between you? And then we do it the same way in our party. We have libertarians fighting each other tooth and nail over these existential threats of whether or not you like this podcaster or not, right? And, you know, the real important stuff. And so this is what politics does. It forces us to look for difference, make it more important than anything else, and create these massive rifts, and continue to widen them, and continue to incentivize the widening of them, and the tribalization, and the all of the dynamics that happen with that. Everything they do is wrong. Everything we do is right. Everything they do, nothing can possibly be redeeming from it. And anything wrong that comes from our side, well, they're just lying about it. You know, or I'm just going to what about how their side's even worse. All of that happens because politics is at its very, like, how it is constructed, it is a conflict machine.
Yeah.
And it is a conflict machine on the front of ideas and thoughts and words and actions. And so what happens is, in order for you to effectively engage in politics, you have to first rob yourself of your individual humanity and then set to immediate work to rob everyone else of it too.
Mm.
We do the opposite. We say, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care who you're voting for. I'm not even going to tell you. I've stopped telling people who I voted for, or even if I have voted, because who cares? My vote in Horry County, South Carolina, isn't even a rounding error. It means literally nothing, right? So who cares? What I say is, I don't care how you voted. I don't care who you support. I don't care which of these politicians you like. You like all of them. You don't like any of them. I don't care. Let's work together on this. Oh, we agree on that? Wow. How about this one? Do we agree on this? Oh, great. Do we agree on this? Do we agree on this? Hey, do you agree that we should be respected as individual human beings? And when we are, that we're more prosperous and more harmonious and happier and freer? Oh, wow. Well, oh, you have an objection to that? Well, what's your idea behind that? Oh, okay, that makes sense. Well, I kind of get that. Well, hey, you want to work with us on this cause and this one and this one and this one and this one and this one? And then suddenly we talk about the human respect principle again, and suddenly they have less opposition to it because I didn't argue with them. I opened a conversation with them. And more importantly, I invited them to join me right here as my comrade in arms to do the right thing now without any litmus test or any pre-qualification questions or any accusations or any I need to see your voting history. Just, hey, brother, hey, sister, come join me right here. Wow, that was a great thing we did. Let's do the next one. And we can have a conversation along the way.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that, even by the way, I think you just explained to me why you pulled away from politics, just inadvertently, but
yes, I did. Yes, that's correct.
but what's interesting about that, we going back to what we were saying about, evangelizing liberty. You don't do that by quoting Rothbard or Bastiat. I will never forget when I interviewed Pastor Moses Colbert in Gastonia, North Carolina. I was interviewing about his case. I think that's probably the first story that I worked with you guys on. And I remember the conversation, and I remember he brought this up himself. I never asked him about his political affiliation, but he told me, I've been voting Democrat all my life. Black pastor, I've been voting Democrat all my life. Now I'm a libertarian. He will probably never read Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard. It doesn't matter. That's all fine and good. There's nothing wrong with reading it. I love that book, and it has shaped my thinking, and it is inspired me. But at the end of the day, he became a libertarian because he saw libertarianism in action, and he was the recipient of that.
Yeah,
Democrats weren't showing up for him. Republicans weren't showing up for him. You did. So to me, that makes a huge difference. And if you look at Jesus's example, he preached all the time, most definitely. But what was always the first thing he did? He came, healed the blind, fed 5,000 people. He did things for people, not to show off, but because he loved them. Going back to that concept, love, human respect. That's what he showed people. And then he would preach to them. Then he would invite them in. I think it's such a great example. And I think, honestly, this is why your organization is succeeding, where, frankly, a lot of other organizations might fail. When you're motivated by love rather than just anger, there's a difference. And even if there's anger that's motivated by love, that's different. Sometimes people are just angry just because they're angry, or they don't really understand where their anger comes from. It tends to come from love in a certain way, whether it's loving the wrong thing or the right thing. So anyway, I've preached enough. But last question though, when we talk about these cases, and you probably run into the same thing that I have, people don't really pay attention to local politics. One of the reasons why I write these stories is to help the people who are being affected, but also to show people this can happen to you. This can happen to somebody you love. These aren't outliers, but people think that these are just like one-offs. What do you say to people who believe that, like the case of the Hernandez family or the Timms family, to people who just think that, oh, this just happens maybe every now and then, maybe somebody will slip through the cracks? What would you say?
Yeah, I show them our causes. Increasingly, I don't really say much of anything other than, hey, here's this newest thing. And I allow them to find the conclusion that they have. That they're going to get, because they're going to get that conclusion anyway. I'm not going to beat anyone over the head with, hey, you're far more likely to get arrested by the local police than by, the Interpol or some joint task force federal agency. You're far more likely to have trouble with like your mayor who lives like in your subdivision or up the road from you than you are with the president, who likely will, if you're like most people, he'll never even know your name. It's I don't I can say that, and they might even say, "Oh, you know what? Good point. It's not going to change anything."
Yeah.
What changes things is when you give them something to do. A very interesting thing is that I have found. You mentioned Pastor Moses. As
Mhm.
far as I know, I never saw anyone trying to like evangelize the Libertarian Party to him. We certainly weren't. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit. We don't tell people who to vote for or parties or anything else. Now, but there were members of the Gaston County Libertarian Party who were there to help.
Mhm.
And I'm sure somewhere along the way, Pastor Moses learned that I kind of got my, I guess, notoriety or my platform from running for vice president as a libertarian. That was sort of my first, exposure to the world or whatever. And so I would imagine those things led to it. But I can tell you right now, we certainly were never like, oh yeah, this is why you got to vote libertarian. We were just like, hey, yeah, we're here to help you. And you're sitting here doing the work you're supposed to be doing. Your city is telling you that you are not zoned to provide charity. As a church, you are not zoned to provide charity, and they literally said you are to keep to religious purposes, because as we all know, the Bible is very clear in saying, do not do for the least of these, because that's not a religious purpose. We all know that that's what that says, right?
Yeah.
It might say something different, but so
Second
that I
Jeremiah.
think that led to yeah, my favorite part of the Bible. Don't do anything for them. That's not a zoned religious purpose. So anyway, so I think that led to him saying that, and that's man, that wasn't a manifestation of me saying, and this is why you have to vote libertarian. That was a manifestation of a greater understanding of the underlying principles behind why we were there helping him in the first place. He was seeing it firsthand, and he learned from that. Going back to Jesus, Jesus would provide miracles that no one could doubt he was coming from a place of authority, right? Like, and he would speak with authority in a way that if you read they didn't call it the Old Testament back then, they called it the law and the prophets. They'd read the books and go, oh wow, yeah, that line that not only lines up perfectly with this, but it seems like what he's saying is a fulfillment of this.
Mhm.
So he helped people. He spoke from authority that literally no one else had ever spoken from. No other human being had ever spoken from. And he sat with sinners and railed against religious hypocrites. Now, a lot of people on the left take that to mean that he would sit down with sinners and affirm their sin and say, oh, yeah, you're not what you're doing is fine. It's these religious people I have a problem with. No. He was going to the sinners, calling out their sin, calling for them to stop sinning and turn to them, and then turning around to the religious hypocrites who lived worse lives than the sinners and pretended that they were fine all along. He told a parable of a Pharisee and a tax collector. And one of the things I love about the Gospels, one of the many things, is that tax collector was like the worst thing you could possibly
The
be.
worst.
And now it's not for, and I hate to break libertarian bubbles when I say this. It wasn't implicitly because they were collecting money from the government, although I'm sure that wasn't like a thing he liked. It was because very often, almost always, they would take more than what was owed to the government. They would skim from the top because what were you going to do? There was nothing they'd say you owe this much, and you go, no, I only owe this much, and they'd say, no, you got to give it to me, and they'd keep the rest. So it was because they were also like hustle men. But libertarians, like, they're like, cause that's proof that God hate. No, that's proof God hates extortion. So all that to say, the Pharisee and the tax collector, they both go up to the same place, and the Pharisee looks up to the sky, and I know I'm going to butcher this, but basically he says, God, I'm so grateful that you've given me such holiness and righteousness, and that I'm nothing like these tax collectors and these sexually immoral people and these degenerates and all these people. Thank you for making me so great and so perfect in your eyes. And then the tax collector comes up to the same spot he was at, can't even look to the sky, and says, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus says, those who are brought low will be the highest, and those who bring themselves high will be the lowest. So when Jesus was sitting with the sinners, I'm evangelizing again, I'm sorry. When he was sitting with the sinners, he wasn't saying, yeah, this sin is great. He was saying the opposite. You're living in your sin and acknowledging it, which puts you a step ahead of the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Because they tithe a tenth of their cumin and then steal a widow's home. Like they've completely lost the script. There's no forest for the trees they're looking at, and they're so focused on the letter of the law that they think that allows them to be complete scumbags and everything else. And so he wasn't telling the sinners, yeah, do whatever you want. He was calling out their sin. He tells the woman caught in adultery, go and sin no more. He turns to the Pharisees and says, you're leading everyone astray. Because as it says many times in scripture, it's those who claim to be teachers of God that will be the worst and most harshly judged, because they're deigning to speak on behalf of God. So the takeaway there is not religious people are bad and prostitutes are great. The takeaway there is these people were honest about who they were, and he saw their genuine desire to turn to him. These people pretended that they were second only to God themselves, when in reality they were every bit as bad, if not worse, than anyone else, and they needed to fix that. But the real lesson there is when any of them turned away from that and turned towards him, they got every treasure in heaven that they could get. And if you don't believe in me, then you can ask the person who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, who was once the worst persecutor, the Pharisee of Pharisees himself, Saul, who became the Apostle Paul. He is a perfect example of someone who was amongst the worst, according to himself, chief of the sinners.
Sinners, yeah.
And when it was time for him to turn to God, he did. And he ended up becoming amongst the greatest of the apostles. He wrote most of the New Testament. He is he became a normative authority. His words are seen universally among Christendom to be God-inspired, God-breathed, infallible words of doctrine that we use to determine what God wants us to do. And he started as one of those Pharisees. So if any of you think you're too far along or you've gone too far, read the scriptures. They say the opposite. Turn to God and he will turn towards you. Turn away from the devil and he will flee. Turn to God and he will turn towards you.
Amen. Well, this has been we have to do this again, because I feel like
Absolutely.
This has got to be one of my favorite interviews. This one actually might have bumped our last interview down, and this one has gone above it. So this is great. So, but before we sign off, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your work, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Go to youarethepower.net. If you need help, if you have a situation where your life is being threatened or your livelihood's being threatened by out of control government officials, your family's being threatened, whatever else, go to youarethepower.net/help. We have a form that you can fill out. Our cause coordinator will be in touch with you. If there is something that we can do, either publicly or privately, we will do it. If you want to be a part of You Are the Power, you want to help spread the word, you want to be at the tip of the spear in being at the front line of fighting against abuses of government authority and fighting for reconciliation for those in positions of authority over us, then join us at youarethepower.net/join. You can become a member today. If you want to give, but maybe you don't have as much time to give, but you would like to give money and you're in a position to be able to bless us financially, you go to youarethepower.net/donate and you can make a tax-deductible donation. If you have a need for all three of those things, you can do all of those things at youarethepower.net. I'm easy to find on social media. You look for Spike Cohen on any social media, you'll find me. I'm there barking at the moon, whatever. That's not the thing. The thing is, you go to youarethepower.net and become a part of what we're doing today. And Jeff, I love you. God bless you and Donnie. Thank you so much for having me on again. And we need to keep doing this, if only to make sure that white supremacy never shows its face again.
I think we've already taken care of that. But thanks again for coming on. Thanks to the audience for watching and listening. And until next time, stay free, stay principled, and most importantly, stay ungovernable.